What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are out sitting in the new Skeeter and we're going to do our first project on the new boat. We are going to be replacing the graph at the bow and the graph at the console. My boat, along with most Skeeters, comes from the factory set up with Humminbird Helix graphs. Nothing wrong with those graphs. They work very well. Lots of people like them. It's just not my preference. I would rather switch these out for some Lowrance graphs. So that's what we're going to do today. I have an Elite FS9 to go at the bow, and I have a new HDS Pro 10 that's going to go at the console. So we're going to be installing those today. I'm going to show you the tools we need to do it. I'm going to show you taking off the old graphs and then wiring in power for the new graphs, getting them set up, and then we're going to run one transducer for the console. It's going to go to the back of the boat. I'm not going to do a transducer at the front of the boat. That Elite FS9 is mostly just going to be for mapping. So I'm going to have that up there along with my Garmin live scope to, reference the maps, use the live scope underneath it. I'm not going to worry about a transducer on the trolling motor for that front graph. So let's get started. I'll show you what we need to get this job going. So here's the setup now at the bow. This is the Helix 9. It's a G4N unit. Nothing wrong with it. It works well. It's just not my preference. I'd much rather go back to the Lowrance like I've been used to on my other boat. So that's why we're making the change. So we're going to put the Elite FS9 up here. And then here's the bow setup. This is the Helix 12. It's also a G4N unit. We're going to be replacing this with the HDS Pro, the 10-inch version. All right, and here's our new hardware. This is the Elite FS9. Comes with your power cable, your gimbal mount, your screen cover. I do have an Ethernet cable to connect the two. And then here is the HDS Pro 10-inch. Power supply with that as well, gimbal cover. And then it comes with the 3-in-1 transducer that we're going to run towards the back. All right, for this job, you're going to probably want a nice handy LED light, your driver or drill with some random drill bits, because we're going to be taking the bow plate off and the plate off at the console, and they usually have some kind of weird hex bit, so you gotta find the right bit for that. We'll need wire strippers and crimpers, and you're going to need various connectors here. Some butt connectors, some ring end terminal probably to go to the power supply. And then to finish it off nice, we've got some heat shrink tubing and a heat gun. All right, we're going to be starting up here at the bow. So the first step is I'm going to get my Garmin graph out of the way, get the Helix off of the mount as well, and then we're going to be taking these covers off of these screws and unscrewing all the screws around the bow plate, and we're going to be pulling that off so we can expose where those power supplies go to. There's a panel right under here that they plug into to get power from the battery. So we're going to be exposing that and disconnecting the Helix unit. All right, we have our bow plate off, and I know this can look confusing, but I promise it's pretty straightforward once you get in here and just kind of start isolating wires. So from our Helix unit, we had a power supply, which you can trace, if I can give you a good shot, right to this bus bar. There's a positive and a negative. We're just going to trace it right back and remove the positive and remove the negative, and we'll keep those screws because we'll plug our new graph into the same place. Then we've got a network cable which actually runs to the console, to the other Helix. Well, actually it goes to a network hub and then to the other Helix unit. We're going to hopefully leave that cable and tie a string to it, or maybe tie our new network cable, the Lowrance network cable, to that and use it to fish the new cable from the bow to the console as we pull the old one out. Hopefully that'll work. It's done in the past. That's usually a good way to do it, so we're going to try that first. And then finally, you have your transducer cable that went from the Helix, and it actually went to the Ultrex trolling motor, to the built-in transducer. So that's the only negative about switching to Lowrance. We're not going to be able to use that because obviously that's not compatible. So that cable, I'm just going to wrap it up and probably secure it with a zip tie or something and push it up under the bow, and it's just going to stay under there. And I'm just not going to use it. Any imaging or any transducer, activity that I'll need, I'm going to use my live scope for. So let me get these wires out of the way and clean this up, and then we'll be ready to take a look at the power supply for the Elite FS unit that's going to go up here. Okay, so we've got the unit, the power supply, and the transducer connector, along with this little harness here, all off. What's left at the front is the transducer cable from the trolling motor, which I'm going to zip tie nice and neat and push under the bow. And then the other part is the network cable that runs to the console. And so I guess the next step here is to start taking off these screws around this console plate, get the Helix 12 out of the way, and then see if we can find the other side of that network cable. And we'll try to pull it. Well, first we'll try to attach it to our new network cable, and then we'll try to pull it through, and at the same time pull through our new Lowrance network cable. Okay, the Helix is out of the way. Here's the harness with power supply, transducer, and network cable. Let's undo these screws and get this plate out of the way, and then we'll be able to see where the power and everything is connected in the back. Alright, the bow plate is removed. We've got plenty of access here. We can easily see that our Helix power supply is going right to this bus bar here. You've got positive to this fuse, negative to this little negative bar here, and actually these are just... Alright, I thought I was going to be able to pull that out of there. They're just clips that clip on, but they're on there pretty good, so never mind doing that on camera. But yeah, they're going to come off right there. We've got our network cable here, and you can tell because it does say Ethernet right there. That is what's running to the bow, and hopefully I'm going to be able to untangle enough so that I can start pulling it. And then finally is the transducer cable that goes from this console unit to the back of the boat, and that transducer is mounted under the boat, under the motor. So that's probably going to be the hardest part about this whole thing, because we're going to be taking screws out of the boat, and we're going to have to put in some marine sealant and put screws back in and mount our new 3-in-1 transducer for Lowrance, which is right there. So again, I'm hoping we can maybe pull this transducer wire with a string on it, probably a cable of some kind, something heavy or something strong, pull it through to leave the wire, and then we'll pull it through from the back, and we'll pull this transducer cable up to here, because we have to go in opposite directions in that case, because obviously you can't pull the giant transducer through the boat. So that's going to be the hardest part, but for now let's get these cables that we can. We're going to remove this power supply out of the way, and then I'm going to try and see if I can wiggle enough slack in that network cable, see if we can do what we want to do. Aha, okay, so important discovery. This Ethernet cable from the console unit, it doesn't go directly to the bow. It goes to this Hummingbird Ethernet port. Sorry, Ethernet hub. So this cable is from the console. This cable runs directly to the bow. So let me disassemble this. There's a power supply to it. There's a couple screws. Let me get this out of here, and then I should be able to pull my cable through, and it'll come from here, and then I'll have to feed it up. There's a hole. I'll feed it up through the console to go to my Lowrance unit. Alright, so we have successfully removed the plate back here, and that exposed those Ethernet cables. The one that's left is actually going to the Raptor power poles, the shallow water anchor, I should say. But the other Ethernet, I was able to find and pull right through the corner of this rod locker, and that is definitely the one that is going up there. So it's wrapped in a couple zip ties. So what I'm going to do is probably cut the zip ties. They're tucked in up here. I'm probably just going to cut where I can see the zip tie and then re-zip tie the rest of the wire, so I'm isolating this one. And then I'll just kind of leave it where it is, and then I'll attach my Lowrance Ethernet to the end of that, and I'll just pull it through. I mean, honestly, it's probably not that difficult because it's pretty open. This little part here was the hardest part, but with that plate behind the hot foot out of the way, it's a pretty straight shot. So I'm going to attach my Lowrance Ethernet to the other end of this one, and I'll pull it through, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, back at the front of the boat, I've got my Lowrance Ethernet cable secured pretty good to the old Humminbird Ethernet cable. And I'm going to come back here, and we are just going to start pulling it through nice and easy, and hopefully we'll guide it right to where we need to go. Alright, well, it took some maneuvering, but we did get our Ethernet cable with enough slack here tucked along the edge, and we've got it showing, well, there it is, right here, with enough room to plug into our unit at the dash. Alright, and now things start to get a little more fun. We've got our power supply for our Elite FS. We have to use some butt connectors and connect the supplied fuse. It's just like an inline fuse harness. There's a 3-amp fuse in here. So we're going to attach it, butt connector there, and then we're going to put a ring terminal on the end here, and then that's going to connect to that panel that's underneath the bow plate. So we'll go ahead and get these fused up. We'll do some heat shrink tubing over the joints to make it look nice and neat, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so we have the power supply for our Elite FS done, and I just did the same thing to the power supply to our HDS for the console. We're using these different connectors. These are what slide into those tabs that are on that bus bar underneath the console, so we're going to use these instead of the ring terminals. We used the fuse harness again, and then one of those terminals at the end. This is a 3-amp fuse, just like the Elite FS, according to the instructions. It's always good to check those out. All right, well, now we're at the fun part. Let's see if we can connect these and power them on. All right, back here at the bow, we've got our ring connectors from our Elite FS power supply, and we're gonna connect the positive one to the positive side of this bar and negative to the negative side using these little screws that were in there already. And then we're gonna flip the main switch in the back and see if we get power to our unit. Okay, we've got our positive connected here, negative is over here. We've got our 3-amp fuse in there. Let's grab the unit. We'll plug the power supply into the back of it and flip the main battery and see what we can do. Okay, that's a good sign. Looks like we're powering up. So now that we know that this is working, power supply is good. Before I do any setup or anything, oh, there's the main menu. We'll go ahead and get this button back up. We can connect the network cable as well. And then that's it. It's just power and network to this guy. It's mostly going to be for mapping. So we will get the bow cleaned up, get these screws back in, we have to mount the new gimbal bracket on this bow plate, and then I'll show you what that all looks like put together. Okay, sorry it's a little dark. Finished product up front. The new Elite FS on top. Garmin here in the front. Turned out pretty nice. All right, let's head to the dash. You know, it occurs to me, I don't need this fuse harness because there's a fuse that's going to go right in that bus bar. Oh, so actually I'm just going to cut that and just attach a connector directly to my positive wire, and then we'll use a fuse in the slot. Let me go fix that. All right, we fixed that situation. Negative's a little bit longer than positive now, but that's okay. We are going to plug these into their spots here. Positive goes on this terminal next to the 3-amp fuse, and then negative is going to go over here. We'll get them in, and we'll see if we can power on the unit. Hey, success. Good deal. All right, mostly just want to make sure that our connections are good, and then I'm going to unplug this, turn the battery back off for a minute, and we'll get the bow plate, sorry, I keep saying that, get the console plate back in place, and then I'll show you the finished product. All right, again, it's dark, I apologize, but we have our HDS mounted. Pretty happy with that. The boat is proper trashed at the moment, but we're doing good. All right, so we got this mounted. It's got power, it's got network. The last step, and it's the hardest step, is we're going to be running the transducer from here to the back of the boat. So I know I put this together, but it's just a couple screws on the outside to take it apart, and probably in the next couple days we'll be doing the transducer part. So we'll be back with that step. Alright guys, we're back. It's the next day. It's a little lighter. I figured I'd give you just another view of how this turned out at the console here. Looks pretty good. It's a little high. I wouldn't necessarily like it that high, but I kind of had to do that because of the hole in the mount. This dash mount just had to go right there. It couldn't go any lower, but it's good. I'm happy with it. So the final step, we're going to take this dash plate off again, and I'm going to find the old transducer cable from the Helix and hopefully tie a cable to that and pull it through, and then I'll have a cable in place, and then I'll tie the new transducer cable to it from the back and hopefully pull it from, you know, from front to back and get the new Lowrance transducer cable in. So that's what we're going to try. It's probably going to be the hardest part of the whole thing here, so fingers crossed. Let's see what we can do. Alright, so we're back under the dash here, and here is our old Helix transducer wire. Now I'm going to try to get my hand down there and kind of see how free pulling this is. I'm going to also have to start from the back in the battery compartment and see if it's connected to anything or if it's bundled. It's probably zip tied to a couple other wires, so it might make it very difficult, but we're going to see what we can loosen up. So I'm going to start up here, and then I'll show you what it looks like from the back. Obviously we'll have to eventually unscrew the transducer itself from the transom of the boat, which also adds to the complexity of this thing, because we're going to have to put new screws in and make sure they're watertight. So let's see how loose we can get this, and we'll find out how difficult it's going to be. Alright, so I've pulled out as much slack from the transducer wire from the front as I could. I guess these Helix transducers have like a split here. 2 different wires. They must meet at some point, because if you follow the wire from the transducer, so there it is, it goes up into that opening, and then I can follow it for a bit over here. Here it is here, but it disappears up into this lip underneath the compartment, and then I guess, you know, up towards the front. So I'm gonna have to get my hand up under here better, and I'm probably gonna have to cut some zip ties because I think it's bundled to other wires. So I'm gonna do that and give you an update in a second. Well guys, we've spent the last hour or so trying to move this transducer cable at all or get any sort of wiggling in it, and there's just no moving. I mean, I took the spout panel off. I crawled in through the battery compartment. There's just no movement. And unfortunately, I think what's going on is, I read some posts to kind of confirm this, but from the factory, these transducer cables are zip tied together with that whole wire harness, and it's just impossible to get it to move. It's in there tight. There's very little clearance. So it's one of those things that if you take your boat to someone to work on, 9 times out of 10 they end up just cutting the transducer cable and pulling it through, and that's just the best way to get it out of there, unfortunately. I didn't want to have to do that. I didn't want to ruin it. There's nothing wrong with this transducer. It works, but you know, at this point I just want to get my Lowrance one in there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut it, pull it loose. If there's some that's stuck in there that doesn't move, I'm going to cut it as much as I can see and leave it, because it's not worth the time to try to mess with it. So we're going to cut our losses, literally, and I'm going to get this new transducer cable in. I'm obviously not going to worry about running it in the tubing or in that bundle. I'm just going to run it through this negative space. Now that I have this panel off at the throttle, it should be even easier. We'll start from the back. We'll run it through the hole in the fitting there. I'll have to take that little fitting off. We'll run it through there, and then we'll just run it up, and hopefully we'll be able to hit the console here. And that's what we're gonna do. So sad. Well, no going back now. All right, so there's our new Lowrance transducer. I have it going through the hole in the transom, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just route it up under the edge of the boat, around the corner of this battery compartment, and straight through that gap. So I'm going to do that with the fish tape. I'll start from the back and I'll just fish it up until I see it in this gap here, and then I'll probably attach the cable and pull it so I've got the end of the cable here, and then I'll probably pull the tape, and then we'll do a second stage, and we'll go from here and we'll push the tape down, and then I'll again attach the cable and pull it through. So we're kind of doing a 2-stage pull here. We'll one side from here, the other side from here. I think that's going to be the easiest, so I'm going to try that, and I'll keep you posted here. Hopefully I can show you what that looks like in a moment. All right, first step is done. I got the fish taped through. Actually, it was easier to go from the control box backwards. You can see it just poking out right there. So I'm going to tie the end of this, well, tape the end of this transducer to that, and we will pull it through, and then we'll get as much slack as we need up here, and then we'll try to do the second leg up to the console. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. We ended up fishing this last second half here. I took the fish tape in from the dash, and I caught it behind the throttle, taped it to the transducer, and we pulled the rest through. And I have it right here. So we'll be able to pull up as much slack as we need in there. And that pretty much finishes everything we need to do at the dash. The next step is to remove the old transducer off the back of the boat, and then we're gonna have to mount the new one. Alright, so we're back here under the boat at the old transducer with its sad little wire clipped off. So I have to unscrew those screws, scrape off any of that little silicone that's there, and then we're going to use the same holes for this new one. This bracket is longer, but the screws should still line up. So we shouldn't have to do new holes in the boat, which is really the main goal. Alright, so we have the old transducer out of the way, screws are out of the way, and I also scraped off all that old sealant. So we've got 3 clean holes there. Not exactly level, but hey, we're going to use the same holes for the new one. We'll just do our best. I'm going to use this 3M 5200 sealant. This is nice and permanent. Should be on there pretty good. There's our new transducer and our screws for the hardware. So we're just going to fill those holes with the 5200 and put the new bracket up and screw them in. I'll let you know what it looks like. Alright, there we go. There's the new transducer mounted. It did get a little messy. I got some of that 5200 kind of more places than I wanted, but it's alright. It's not going anywhere. It still allows me to adjust the transducer up and down. I kind of have it just pointing just slightly downward of level. I think that's about where I want it, but I can always adjust that bracket and move the angle if I want to, but I'm pretty sure that the position is good because that's where the other one was from the factory. So let's tuck all this extra cable back up nicely in the battery compartment and see where that leaves us. Okay, so we don't actually have a ton of extra transducer cable. We have about this here, so I'm just going to zip tie this, and we're just going to slide it probably down this little space between the onboard charger and this battery, just to keep it out of the way. And next we can come back up to the console, get our graph back on there, get everything plugged in, and then make sure it senses the transducer. Alright, we've actually fast forwarded a couple days, and before we test that transducer, I do want to point out I did switch my graph mount. I bought one from Bass Boat Technologies. I know I had said that height wasn't going to be an issue, but the more I thought about it and the more I sat here, I just didn't like how high it was. This one lowers the graph a bit. It's about 1 inch lower than it was before. They send you the whole new dash plate. So I was able to just swap that, mount the graph on this one. I think I'm a lot happier with this setup, so we're gonna go with this. But now we can make sure that transducer is working. So let's just get in here. I'm gonna go to sonar. Let's just make sure it's on. Okay, we're getting some readings. That's good. We're not gonna obviously see a whole lot on the garage floor, but I got a temperature reading. No depth, of course, but I think we're good. That's what we needed to see. So let's just stop that because I don't usually like running it out of water for very long. Cool. All right, so that pretty much completes the setup. We've got the Lowrance HDS10 here at the dash. And then up front, we've got the Elite FS9. I ended up putting that on the bottom and the Garmin on top. I think that works out better. It's easier to see the mapping down there. And with the Garmin screen being bigger, being a little further away wasn't a problem. So I think I'm going to leave them in that order. But that should do it. So that's it. Our Humminbird units are out. Lowrance units are in. Pretty easy job. You can absolutely do yourself. Leave me a comment with any questions you have. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you guys in the next one.